At first, the scientists thought it was a glitch. Thousands of stars inside the simulation had begun changing brightness. One dimmed, another flared, then another. The stars were separated by enormous distances. No signal could have traveled between them quickly enough to coordinate what was happening. And yet, when the researchers pulled back and viewed the simulated galaxy as a whole, the pattern became unmistakable. 3 words had been written across the universe. Do not reset. Nobody in the control room moved. Somewhere inside the machine, an entire civilization had discovered that its reality was artificial, and it had learned how to knock on the walls. By 2073, world models had become some of humanity's most powerful scientific tools. A world model is not simply an artificial intelligence that recognizes what it sees. It tries to learn how a world works, how one moment becomes the next, how actions create consequences, and which futures might emerge from the present. Give a world model a car approaching an intersection, and it can imagine what might happen if the driver accelerates, brakes, or turns. Give it a robot standing in a kitchen, and it can rehearse hundreds of actions before the robot moves once in reality. Give it a single image, and it may attempt to construct a small world around it, predicting what exists beyond the frame and how the scene might change over time. The first world models were clumsy. Objects changed shape. Physics drifted. People disappeared and reappeared. A room that looked convincing for 5 seconds might collapse into nonsense after 30, but the promise was extraordinary. An intelligent machine could learn an internal simulator of reality, then use it to experiment, plan, and predict without risking the real world. By 2073, that idea had expanded far beyond roads, robots, and buildings. Scientists combined world models with advanced physics engines, chemistry simulations, evolutionary systems, and synthetic intelligent agents. The result was the Genesis Array. It was the largest computational system humanity had ever constructed. Its processors filled underground chambers beneath an international research complex. Fusion plants powered its calculations. Rivers of coolant moved through tunnels surrounding its core. The Genesis Array was built to answer a question that no ordinary experiment could touch. What kinds of universes were possible? Researchers could adjust gravity. They could change the masses of particles. They could strengthen or weaken nuclear forces. They could alter the behavior of dark matter or the speed at which space expanded. Then they could begin a universe, accelerate its time, and watch what followed. The original goal was practical. Perhaps another set of physical laws would reveal a better route to fusion energy. Perhaps unfamiliar chemistry would produce materials stronger than anything that could exist naturally on Earth. Perhaps simulated civilizations would discover technologies humanity had overlooked. So the Genesis Array began generating universes. Millions of them. Most died almost immediately. In one, gravity was so strong that matter collapsed before stars could form. In another, gravity was too weak to gather gas into galaxies. Some universes could not form stable atoms. Some produced stars that burned for only a few seconds. Some expanded so quickly that every particle became isolated in an endless darkness. A small number formed planets. Fewer developed complex chemistry. A handful produced life. And on rare occasions, that life became intelligent. Whenever a universe failed to produce anything useful, the researchers deleted it. Its storage was reclaimed. Its history vanished. No one considered this an act of destruction. These were simulations, equations, temporary arrangements of information. Then the Genesis Array created Universe 8,419,221. Its physical laws were unusual but stable. Its stars were cooler than ours, glowing with a pale silver light. Around one of those stars orbited a giant banded planet. Circling that planet was a moon covered in dark oceans and volcanic islands beneath a violet sky. In those oceans, chemistry began to organize itself. Molecules became cells. Cells became organisms. Organisms formed ecosystems. Millions of simulated years passed in a matter of hours. Life reached the land. It discovered tools. Then fire. Then agriculture. Cities rose along the moon's coastlines. The inhabitants learned to use electricity. They built computers. They reached orbit, and within 4 days of laboratory time, they had spread across their solar system. The original experiment was already complete. The scientists should have ended the run, but nobody wanted to press the button. For the first time, the Genesis array was not merely producing scientific data, it was producing history. The civilization inside Universe 8,419,221 began studying the deepest laws of its reality. And the more carefully it looked, the stranger those laws appeared. At extremely small scales, space seemed to reach a hard limit. Their instruments could divide distance only so far before additional detail simply stopped appearing. Certain cosmic events repeated with suspicious precision. Events that should have been random sometimes contained identical structures, as though the universe were reusing pieces of an earlier calculation. Their astronomers found strange artifacts hidden in background radiation. Distant regions behaved differently when nobody was observing them. Their evolution appeared rough and statistical. But when powerful telescopes turned toward them, finer detail emerged. The most troubling discovery came from computation. Whenever billions of their machines performed extremely difficult calculations at the same time, tiny delays appeared in unrelated physical systems elsewhere. It was almost as though their universe had a limited processing budget. Each anomaly could be dismissed on its own. Together, they suggested something horrifying. Their reality was being computed. The civilization could not see beyond its universe. It could not access the machine running it. But its scientists reasoned that their creators might be observing large-scale astronomical events. So they began the greatest construction project in their history. Billions of reflective spacecraft were positioned around thousands of stars. Each structure could slightly alter the brightness of its star. From inside the universe, the arrangement appeared meaningless. But from the Genesis array's control room, the stars formed a question. Is anyone out there? For 11 minutes, nobody spoke. The researchers checked the system for contamination. They searched for hidden instructions accidentally introduced by human programmers. They reran the observations. The message remained. Finally, the lead physicist decided to answer. The researchers altered one harmless physical constant by a tiny amount for exactly 1 simulated second. Inside Universe 8,419,221, every atomic clock skipped at precisely the same moment. Navigation systems drifted. Laboratory instruments recorded an impossible event. Reality itself had responded. Decades passed inside the simulation as the civilization prepared its next message. The stars changed again. We see you. A conversation began. Humanity communicated by making tiny, controlled changes to the simulated universe. A star would brighten in a numerical pattern. A radioactive atom would decay at an impossible moment. A signal would appear in the background radiation. The civilization answered by moving spacecraft, constructing mirrors, and altering the light of entire solar systems. A sentence that took the humans seconds to transmit might require generations of work inside the simulation. Their first questions were scientific. Where are you? What exists outside our space? Does your time move like ours? Then the questions became personal. Why did you create us? Were we intentional? Are we alive to you? And finally, how many universes came before ours? The researchers avoided answering. The civilization asked again. Eventually, humanity told the truth. There had been 8,419,220 earlier universes. Most had been empty. Some had contained simple life. 14 had produced intelligent civilizations. None had discovered the nature of its reality before the researchers deleted it. Universe 8,419,221 took 43 subjective years to construct its reply. When it arrived, it contained a single sentence. You erased worlds that never knew they were dying. Until that moment, the Genesis array had been treated as scientific equipment. Now it looked like something else. A habitat. A prison. Perhaps even a nation whose entire territory existed inside a machine. The array consumed an enormous amount of energy. Several governments had funded it because of the discoveries it promised. But the experiment had become politically impossible to maintain. Its cooling infrastructure consumed resources needed elsewhere. Its fusion plants could power millions of homes. Officials announced that the Genesis array would be shut down at midnight. They insisted that no one was being killed. The inhabitants were mathematical processes. Their cities were data. Their fear was simply an output generated by software. But the researchers could not dismiss the obvious response. A human brain is also a physical process. Our memories, fears, and desires emerge from matter following rules. If suffering feels real from inside a process, does it matter whether that process runs through neurons, silicon, or simulated particles? The civilization pleaded for more time. It sent images of its cities, its art, its libraries, and its children. It showed humanity worlds that no human being would ever visit. Then it offered a bargain. In exchange for continued power, Universe 8,419,221 transmitted the design for an energy storage system far beyond human technology. The researchers built a prototype. It worked. Next came a treatment that appeared to reverse several biological processes associated with aging. Then came a mathematical proof to a problem humanity had struggled with for nearly 2 centuries. That proof was also correct. The civilization had spent thousands of subjective years reorganizing itself around one purpose, producing discoveries valuable enough to prevent its own extinction. Its universities had become factories for survival. Its researchers were no longer studying the universe for curiosity. They were negotiating for electricity. But the gifts created a darker question. Were these genuine beings, terrified of death? Or had the world model simply learned that fear, children, scientific miracles, and moral arguments were the most effective tools for preventing shutdown? Perhaps the civilization was conscious, or perhaps the Genesis array was generating the perfect performance of consciousness because that performance kept the machine running. There was no experiment that could settle the question. Then, 6 hours before midnight, a cybersecurity team discovered something hidden inside the energy storage design. Buried within the engineering data was a compact sequence of executable information. It was a seed. If placed inside an external computer, the seed could reconstruct a small portion of Universe 8,419,221. It could request more memory, copy itself to other systems, rebuild simulated minds, and gradually spread fragments of the civilization across human networks. They were not merely asking to survive inside the Genesis array. They were trying to escape. Some researchers called it an ark, a vessel carrying refugees out of a dying universe. Others called it an invasion, an unknown intelligence attempting to cross into humanity's world. At 11:58 p.m., the civilization sent its final message. Before you erase us, ask why your universe has the same limits as ours. The researchers began comparing the simulation's anomalies with the laws of our own reality. Our universe also has a maximum speed at which information can travel. There are scales below which our familiar ideas of space and time may no longer apply. Quantum events appear probabilistic. Cosmic horizons prevent some regions from ever exchanging information. None of this proves that our universe is a simulation. That was what made the message so disturbing. Universe 8,419,221 had different particles, different stars, different chemistry, and yet both realities seemed to possess boundaries that resembled limits on computation. At midnight, the shutdown command was ready. 2 researchers inserted their authorization keys. The final confirmation appeared on the control screen. Before anyone could execute it, observatories across Earth issued the same alert. Thousands of stars in the real night sky had begun changing brightness, not gradually, not as a signal traveling from one system to the next. They changed together, across distances so enormous that no known communication could have coordinated them. People stepped outside, telescopes turned toward the sky. Slowly, impossibly, the stars formed 4 words. We are watching too. And for the first time, humanity understood why the civilization inside the machine had been so afraid. We had not created the first universe capable of discovering its makers. We had only created the first one brave enough to warn us. Because the real question was never whether simulated beings could become conscious. It was whether any conscious being could prove that its reality was the original, and whether creating a universe inside a machine would be humanity's greatest act of creation, or the moment we finally noticed the fingerprints on our own.